We welcome back to the program Senate Majority Leader Jack Johnson, who is in studio a little bit further away, but he's just as close to us in our hearts. Hello, Jack.
Wow, the new studio is amazing. It looks great. Where did my flags go?
I told you they're right there.
Okay,
they're in the newsroom.
Okay, good.
Well, and I wanted, here's the deal. They're in the newsroom. Because Jack donated the Tennessee and the United States of American flag. I think those flew over the
they did.
Flew over the Capitol building.
We gave you certificates, a testimony.
I know. You and I are bound by those flags because you provided the flags and I bought the flag poles after being told that the flag poles were not in the budget. So I said, well, I think we
kind of need to have polls.
I think they're in my budget. So my plan is, I've told no one this, and I make no decisions because I'm a worker bee. But I thought, wouldn't they look like right over your right shoulder, right there in that corner?
Really good.
Look really good.
Yeah, that'd be a great backdrop.
Because people would see them right behind Senate Majority Leader Jack Johnson. But I was told
There's far more distinguished people that'll be sitting here than me that they will look good for. So.
I was told to hold your wad until the room is done, and then we can dress out the room with the.
It looks really good though. I've been in here many times over the years, and this is amazing.
It's I think we moved from. What would you say, Weber? Somewhere in 1996, we probably got to what? 2014, maybe?
A good day, maybe, yeah.
I don't know. The TV, though,
yeah.
That television is modern America right there.
That's true.
That is true. Well, good to have you in, Jack.
Yeah, thanks. I'm sorry I was cutting it a little bit close on time. I got tied up over. We're not in session this week. The Senate's not, although we still have a lot of meetings going on, and so I got tied up as I was rushing out.
Y'all haven't had anything going on, right?
No, it's been quiet.
Your analysis of the special session.
In 4 days, we addressed three very, very big, important, and to some degree complicated subject areas. And I got to tell you, I've been doing this for quite a while, and I've never seen, I think, the system work better than it did working between the House, the Senate, and the governor's office. Of course, we talk about special session. Yeah, that was 4 days. Well, there were months of work leading up to those 4 days to actually get legislation across the finish line. But the actual process worked very well. Great cooperation between the House and the Senate and the governor's office. And I'm proud. To get that done in 4 days, special session, you go in and you're focused on just a very, very small number of things. During regular session, it's more drawn out, but you may be voting on hundreds of bills, in committee and on the floor. And so there's a lot more coming. Special session is very limited, but you can do a very deep dive on a handful of things. And I'm proud. We got everything accomplished that we wanted to, that the governor proposed. And I think Tennessee's better for it. And
I would toward your point, I think it took, last session to help us understand, some of the different approaches that both bodies had on this to get you guys together out of session.
Right.
I know there were many meetings and many discussions about not just the Education Freedom Act, but, other matters that you might be called into a special session with regard to, pressing matters like immigration. It was a long time coming to get to that 4 day crunch.
Yeah. Someone said that was being critical of our efforts that we were rushing this through. Well, we spent a year working on it and talking about it and hours and hours of conversation with stakeholders and fellow members and the governor's office and everything else. So the special session is kind of just the last step to actually get these things done. You don't just wake up one day, the governor, and say, hey, let's go into special session for 4 days. And by the way, I want you to tackle these three. No, we've known for months that we're going to be doing this. So, but from a procedural standpoint, it was very good, very efficient, lots of discussion, even though it was a handful of things over a 4 day period of time. But if you watched any of the proceedings, the committee hearings, House, Senate, a lot of conversation about it. So I think we did good work.
Anytime we have these discussions, it occurs to me that we have two tracks of thought. One is what happened, what will the impact be to the people of the state of Tennessee? And the other is kind of more of a political piece. And I'm curious on the political side of things, which is not nearly as important, frankly. No offense to you guys, but not nearly as important.
I agree completely.
But it seemed that the House, it got a little more heated than it did in the Senate. And I would ask you, and I'm not saying that one is better than the other. I just would ask, was that your observation, and is that just the nature of the difference of the two bodies?
It really is, and in fact, that's fairly consistent with regular session. And I think that's the way the framers wanted it to be. The House, there's more members, there's 99 of them, there's more people to talk, and the passions get a little bit more inflamed. The Senate tends to be, not that we get very passionate in the Senate too, and people get very passionate about their arguments, but we do tend to be the more deliberative body, and there's fewer of us, and so there's fewer people to talk on things, so they can talk longer, and we can spend more time in committee. And again, it's not a criticism of the House or the Senate; it's just the nature of the process of how things work. But you're right. I use this phrase frequently. I may have said it on your show. We do policy first, then we worry about politics. And that's the way I've always governed, is I'm going to do what I think is the right policy, regardless of the political implications. Those will work themselves out over time. But I think we passed really, really good policy.
Do you, and I want to speak on the immigration piece more than even the Education Freedom Act, and not that the Education Freedom Act isn't very important, but I think we've talked a lot about that.
It's gotten a lot of discussion.
Do you, now that it is to the governor and it will be signed and it will become law and we will see impact this calendar year, right? I mean, this year you will have parents applying for scholarships, receiving scholarships. Do you understand the criticism by Republicans, not Democrats? Democrats don't, they love the unions, they love the status quo, they love the monopoly. But the Republicans, do you understand what their concerns are?
So I've heard them, and I try to listen. I just disagree vehemently. It's hard for me to understand the arguments from those who would call themselves a fellow conservative against it. Again, full respect, I'm not denigrating anyone. But if you really believe in empowering parents, how could you oppose this legislation? Because that's ultimately what the legislation does. So, again, I've got good friends that oppose the legislation. We're going to be good friends into the future, but I do have a hard time seeing when we've discussed it ad nauseum, addressing some of the alleged concerns about it. But that's the way the process works. We got 20 votes in the Senate. We got 53 votes in the House. Governor Lee's going to sign it. And here's the other thing about this, Matt, is we passed it. Now it's got to be implemented. We're going to get data. We're going to see how it works. We're going to get, this is something, it's not a one and done, right? Mm-hmm. We're going to continue to have conversations. We may go back and revise it later. We may tweak it. Hopefully at some point we'll expand it and try to help more families. But, maybe I'm not the right person to ask, because I believe so passionately in this, in empowering parents. And as I said on the floor, we want a great public school system, and we're going to continue to work for that. But you're being disingenuous if you think that no matter how hard we work, that public school system that we run is going to meet the needs of every student in Tennessee as determined by their parents. And it's not going to. And that's why you need this alternative for those families who want to choose a different option for their kids. And that's what we did, and I'm proud of it. And again, the conversation will continue.
One more, I promise to know more, but one more question on the Education Freedom Act, and then we'll move to the immigration piece. Because one, I don't want to get into immigration. I don't want us to fuss with one another. We don't have enough time. I don't know that we're going to fuss, but we'll find out. So, one of the criticisms that I heard, and I don't mean to be dismissive of the Democrats, but I kind of am. But I'm more genuinely interested in the Republican, and one of the odd criticisms, I know it's in the House, but was that they did not have enough time to argue against this. They said, y'all didn't give us, and Representative Barrett said, y'all gave us 4 minutes. And I thought both sides had 45 minutes. Pro and con. That was my understanding. Right. Do you feel like the opposition was fairly heard?
Well, and I'll speak to the Senate first, and then I'm always careful about speaking about House procedure because I don't serve in that body. They make their own rules, and I fully support whatever they decide to do. On the Senate side, we had no limitations on any conversation. We did call for the question, but there was no objection from the Democrats, meaning everyone kind of agreed we had spent enough time. Everyone had an opportunity to say their piece. Same thing in the committee system. And Matt, it's not just what happens in that time during session. This has been a topic of conversation for over a year in the state of Tennessee. For, against, I've had dozens, if not hundreds of meetings with constituents, for and against, school officials, teachers, and other members have as well. We have talked this thing to death, if you will. So for someone to say that someone didn't have enough time to voice their opinion on it, I don't agree with that. I think we've really had a good public conversation. The General Assembly had a good conversation about it, and members knew where they were. It was time to vote for it or against it.
All right, perfect way to suspend the conversation for just a moment. We've got Ken Weaver coming in here with news headlines. Jack Johnson is with us. We'll talk immigration bill in the Tennessee special session. It has passed. It has gone to the governor. When is he signing these things? Do you know?
I don't know that he has publicly announced that. He's got a certain amount of time from the time he receives it from the speakers, but I'm confident it'll probably be this week.
Yeah, before the state of the state address.
Of the state, exactly.
Tell me, obviously the East Tennessee disaster relief funding is kind of a no-brainer.
Sure.
We've talked quite a bit about education. Tell me what the immigration piece was about.
Yeah, so there are three primary components there. Number one, and let me stop for a moment and say the reason for this and the reason for the urgency and the reason the governor included it in the call for the special session. We have a new sheriff in town in Washington, D.C. His name is Donald J. Trump. He's not sheriff. He's president of the United States.
But,
we get the expression.
Yeah.
And one of the things he campaigned on, and we are already seeing he and his staff in action on, is relative to deportation of particularly violent people that are in the country illegally. You've seen, Matt, we've all seen these folks in other states, governors, mayors, sheriffs, other elected officials in other states saying that they're going to impede or try to impede the efforts of Immigrations and Custom Enforcement and the Trump administration. We wanted to send the exact opposite message that, no, we are fully going to cooperate. Our local law enforcement, our state law enforcement, all levels of government in Tennessee are going to cooperate with their efforts. And in fact, we hope and encourage them to come to Tennessee and get these violent folks out of our communities. So we created a central immigration enforcement division under the Department of Homeland Security. We put a sunset on it. It may not be something we need into perpetuity, but we wanted to make sure that there is a point person or persons for all the stakeholders across the state can go to get their questions answered. What do we do about this? How do we do this? If ICE is going to come into our state, they can notify them and say, hey, we're going to be executing raids in this community or that community, and here's the intel we have, or whatever. So we want to make sure that's all being cooperated with at the local level. So that's one thing. The other thing is
can I ask you a question on that first point? So you said it was called the what?
Central Immigration Enforcement Division. Yeah.
Why in the world did we not call this the Immigration Customs Enforcement Division of Tennessee? Because then it would be iced tea. Jack,
we failed. We missed
yours is the CIED.
That's a great point.
It could have been the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Division of Tennessee.
We go into regular session on Monday, and I can still make that happen.
Please.
I can try. I don't know I can get the votes for it, but I love that.
Who doesn't like iced tea?
We're Southern.
I will not argue a second of this bill if you name it iced tea.
Sweet iced tea. I mean,
it's pretty sweet. Trumps it up. All right. So anyway, but that aside, so do we not? And I'm not trying to be. Do we not already have that? Do we not already have a component of that could have served in that capacity without creating another level of bureaucrocy?
Well, first of all, I'd push back that it's a level of bureaucracy.
How much money did it cost?
We have
$5 million?
No, about $500,000. About $500,000 for the four positions.
The legislation will fund. So is the within the Tennessee Department of Safety and Homeland Security, the legislation will fund $5 million. Allowing Lee to tap. I mean, maybe the Tennessean might be wrong.
No, they're right. But $5 million is for something different that I'm about to get to.
Oh, okay. I'm ahead of myself.
That's okay. No. For administration of these, it's for four positions in the Department of Homeland Security, Department of Safety. And by the way, they have some open positions. They may not even need that appropriation, but want to make sure they have it. The second thing the legislation does is create a grant fund for local law enforcement. That's the $5 million, and that's a one-time appropriation. We're going to set up a grant fund, a pool that local governments can pull down from if they want to participate in the 287G program, which is a long-standing from 1996 program. No one really uses it or has used it much because it hasn't been that effective. Mm-hmm. But we think, based on what's been telegraphed from the Trump administration, that this is going to be a far more relevant program. And it's where local law enforcement, our sheriffs who run our jails, and other law enforcement can partner with and get trained by ICE in order to execute some of those responsibilities and form a better partnership. So it's not just federal agents coming into your community. It would be really good if there's good cooperation between the sheriff's office or the local police department. So that's kind of what I'm skimming over it, but that's a 287G. But that may require some training, maybe some additional equipment or some things like that. So that's the $5 million of one-time appropriation.
So am I hearing you correctly? You don't want these local communities to not get the training necessary for a lack of funding.
Exactly. And you think about 95 counties across the state. Some are more affluent and prosperous than others. Some of them are on very, very tight budgets. And so
is that a needs-based allocation?
Yeah. The department will determine, and local law enforcement agencies can apply and say, yeah, we want to buy this equipment, or we want to send these officers to this training so they can know how to better partner with ICE. So that's the $5 million. The recurring for the positions was roughly half a million dollars.
Got it.
And then the third and final thing was relative to the driver's licenses, which this was a big issue for House Majority Leader William Lamberth, to make sure that those driver's licenses are clearly marked for people who are in the country lawfully. Maybe they're here on a work visa, or they can be here and they're working and they can drive. And in some instances, they do get a Tennessee driver's license. But we want to make sure it's clearly distinguished between that and a United States citizen.
And I'm not being cute when I ask this question. I'm being sincere. Why? Why do we need to distinguish?
Well, I'd say the primary reason is for voting.
Sure.
You want to make sure, because in Tennessee, you have to show ID
Somebody
to
pops
vote.
an ID and
exactly.
might get them
right. Because as it is right now, if you're a lawful permanent resident, I hope I get my terminology right, but you're not a United States citizen, you can be here, you can have a driver's license, but your driver's license just looks just like yours or mine.
Right.
And it should be distinguished from a United States citizen for purposes of voting or purposes of obtaining certain types of public assistance and things like that. We just need to make sure, those lines are clearly noted. And then there's a provision in there relative to the existing law, and I know I suspect you want to talk about this relative to local government officials. It's a violation of current law in Tennessee to adopt any policy that would make you a sanctuary city or sanctuary county, a political subdivision. And but unfortunately, that provision in the current statute doesn't really have much teeth in it. It's against state law now to do anything to thwart the efforts of ICE to enforce federal law. It's a violation of federal law. If you've seen Tom Homan on TV, and he's been on TV a lot, and when he's asked, well, what are you going to do in such and such city, where the mayor said they're going to just thwart any effort your people extend to in order to get people out. And he said, well, I'm going to arrest them and charge them with a felony.
Right.
Because it's a felony under federal law.
You don't have to help us, but you can't hurt us.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Okay, so if that is already going to happen, so who would initiate that? In other words, if there is a community hindering the federal government in their pursuit of illegal aliens in the state of Tennessee, would it not be the federal government that would raise the flag?
Could be, and probably under President Trump's Department of Justice, under the leadership of Pam Bondi, I suspect there might be some prosecutions of that. But it is not uncommon for us to mirror state law with federal law, with similar types of penalties, so that if for whatever reason they don't have the resources to go after someone who's violating federal law, we have a similar parallel law in state law, so that our local DAs or Attorney General can pursue it.
So can you then? What would the initiating body be under this legislation to arrest, for example, a city councilor?
So
and what would the parameters be that would cause that arrest? In other words, if a city council voted, it's a 9-person city council, and they voted 5-4 on a sanctuary city status and voted sanctuary cities down, they're not going to do it. But 4 of them voted for sanctuary cities. Are they arrestable?
They could be. We have prosecutorial discretion in Tennessee, and it would be up to the DA.
You're going to arrest duly elected officials for being dumb?
If they're breaking federal law and breaking state law, and it's already a violation of state law, and it's already a violation of federal law to take action that thwarts or impedes the effort of federal authorities to come in and enforce federal immigration law.
But no law was enacted in my scenario, in my hypothetical. There was no city council municipal ordinance that was enacted. You just had maybe somebody just making a statement that they were against the federal law, that they were standing, I don't know, that they were dumping tea over a boat into a harbor, which is, this seems to go against the fundamental backbone of the United States of America, that each man duly elected has an opportunity to vote, even in protest of what is existing law. I think the state of Tennessee did it with the abortion laws in the state of Tennessee. When Roe v. Wade was the law of the land, did not Tennessee vote knowing that the law that they were passing was illegal based on Supreme Court precedents, but y'all did it anyway?
Well, we passed a law that was in violation of Supreme Court case ruling. I don't know if I'd characterize it as a violation of the law. Look, Matt.
The Supreme Court ruling said that no state could. But just help me understand what's different about this.
Well, I'll tell you what's different. We're in an unprecedented time right now in our country. We have a president of the United States who ran for re-election, and his number one campaign issue was to deal with illegal immigration. Our state and our nation, our communities are being overrun with people that are in this country illegally. Tennessee has the highest rate of death of overdose from fentanyl more than any other state in America. So we have a horrific problem that has taken place at our border. And as Marsha Blackburn says, every state is a border state and every town is a border town. We want to fix that. And if there's a locally elected official, a city alderman, a county commissioner or something, who is going to thwart existing federal law, it's already illegal. It's already against the law to do it. But it's just we don't have any teeth in the state statute.
You didn't pass a law that permitted you to throw them out of office. You passed a law that permits you to throw them in jail. That's my problem with this, is that you're making it a criminal offense. And explain to me why we went to the criminal side of this as opposed to just saying, look, if you are going to vote in a fashion that is clearly against state law, and I agree with you on all of this. You and I are not far off from it, but my issue is if I want to take a stand for what I believe in, and I know the state disagrees with me, and I know the federal government disagrees with me, you're making me taking a political stand against the law, and you're going to put me in jail as a state entity for making that political stand. That does not feel like America, Jack.
You, Matt, are equating having a difference of opinion with violating law.
I'm not violating law by casting a vote.
There is a distinct difference between taking a stand and voting for something, even if it has been ruled unconstitutional by the United States Supreme Court.
Why don't you make it illegal for the Democrats in the General Assembly to vote against how you want them to vote then? If you feel like they're voting against established state law, which they do on the regular, why don't you just, it doesn't seem American to make it a criminal act.
It is American to follow the law. It is American to respect the laws that have been passed at the federal and the state level. It's already, I don't know how many times I got to say it, it's already against the law.
But y'all did the same thing with the abortion deal. What was it? Explain to me how it was different with the abortion again.
So, I don't think it's directly analogous, but because I don't get the analogy that you're trying to make between that and this, but I'll do the best that I can.
The Supreme Court said that it was impermissible for any state in the United States, and I disagree with all of this. The Supreme Court said that it was impermissible for any state to ban abortive practices in the first trimester. That was what Roe v. Wade said. Yet y'all in the Tennessee...
There was no criminal penalty associated with that, Matt. But it was a Supreme Court case.
But if we had your way, then we would throw you in jail for violating what was...
Well, then you need to go back to when the federal government passed a federal statute that makes it a felony. Tom Homan talks about this every time he's on TV. Tom Homan says, if you impede the effort of me to come into your community and get these violent people out of your community, then I'm going to charge you with a felony. And that's already in the law right now.
And if the federal statute already exists, then what is the necessity for the state?
So that our state prosecutors can prosecute it just like the Federal Department of Justice.
But that is frequently. That is a state entity hindering the federal government.
No, it's not.
No. That's exactly why they have the federal law in place. That a state or a local entity cannot hinder the federal government from doing what is clearly federal under the purview of the federal government.
Our state statute mirrors federal law in a myriad of cases. It's not uncommon for us to have a similar law on the books.
Immigration law is covered by whom? The federal government first and foremost.
Yes, but we have a state statute that was passed by the General Assembly overwhelmingly making it illegal for a local government, a local political subdivision, or anyone elected at the local level to impede federal officers from doing their job. And that's good public policy for the state of Tennessee to have.
Why can you not remedy this in the judicial system? Why can't you just simply remedy it by saying, going to the courts and saying, the ordinance that this local municipality passed is clearly illegal per state statute, per federal law, and it needs to be thrown out? Why do you have to remedy it by threatening to put people in jail?
Well, for the same reason Tom Homan does. For the same reason that the federal borders are appointed by President Trump is saying that every time he's on TV.
Jack, you guys were telling me that y'all didn't have the authority to go into businesses and round up illegal aliens because it was the job of the federal government.
That's right.
And now you're telling me that it is your job.
No, I'm not. Don't put words in my mouth. I never said that. What we're saying is that you cannot impede the efforts of those federal authorities to come in and do their job.
I understand that, but why not allow the federal government to do what is clearly its job on its own?
We want them to.
So you understand how it makes your position and my position harder when you're threatening to put city councilors or local municipality governance in jail.
Well, I hope it never comes to pass. I hope it's not an issue. I hope no one elected at the local level in the state of Tennessee decides that they want to thwart the efforts of the federal immigration enforcement officials to come in and get the bad guys out of their community.
Well, I mean, I
do want our local DAs to be able to prosecute them if they deem it appropriate. And they have prosecutorial discretion, just like the Department of Justice does. And I suspect that the federal Department of Justice probably would come in and prosecute someone if they did it, because it's a felony under federal law. And we just want to have it mirrored that way in state law.
And understand, you and I agree on the principal points on all of this. I disagree with criminalizing elected officials
breaking the law. It's breaking the law.
No. You guys did it with the abortion deal, Jack.
I don't buy that analogy, Matt. I don't.
You parked the abortion bill. You knew that it was going to be challenged. You knew it would be parked. Y'all passed it knowing that it was not going to pass muster per the Supreme Court. I'm just using it as an example.
No one in the state of Tennessee violated any law by passing that. It was a federal court decision that rendered abortion legal pursuant to Roe v. Wade. And we did pass a law that ended up being, among many other states, to go and be a test case. That's a far different scenario. I don't accept the analogy at all that it mirrors what we did right here. It's a violation of federal law. We want state law to mirror the same thing so that if someone violates it, Pam Bondi could come in with the Department of Justice and prosecute that locally elected official. Why shouldn't a local DA be able to do the same thing?
Does this not give the federal government, should, God forbid, a Democrat get elected, sort of the same type of authority over states like Tennessee's? I mean, if a Democrat's elected on the federal level, what you are suggesting is if that a federal law is passed, that in some way...
No, I'm not saying that. You have federal laws that are on the books that are prosecuted by federal law enforcement, FBI, DEA, federal agencies.
And immigration is a uniquely federal. It is a uniquely federal.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. But it is completely reasonable, and it is absolutely good policy for the Tennessee General Assembly to say to our partners in local government, we are going to cooperate.
And
if you don't cooperate, then you could be prosecuted by the federal Department of Justice, or you could be prosecuted by state DA.
Where is it happening?
Where's what happening?
What municipalities are passing laws?
Well, it's been largely moot for the last 4 years, and even prior to that, because we didn't have a federal immigration and custom enforcement agency that was doing its job. It was better under the first Trump administration, but even under Bush and Clinton and Obama, you didn't have it happening. That's why this is needed, Matt. This is extraordinary. I recognize it is, and it's something we've not done before, but it is warranted because this issue is the number one issue on the minds of Tennesseans and Americans, is to get these violent people out of our communities, and no local elected official should stand in the way of doing that.
But it's not happening in any local community right now that you know of in Tennessee.
To my knowledge, Tom
just asking.
Homan has not come in with ICE to any of our communities yet to start rounding up these violent people. But we expect that to happen in the very near future. We hope it does anyway.
If Tom Homan does his job, all of this feels largely performative to me. I mean, it's just...
I disagree. It's not. It's not performative. It's good public policy, and it mirrors state law with what's already in federal law, and we should be able to do that.
Jack, you and I agree on a lot of things. We'll disagree on this, and I appreciate the spirited debate, my friend.
Absolutely.